post-credit sequences, movie trailers, casting rumors, and what's number one on this week's Cover Price Top 10 list? Let's take a deep dive up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, like, comment, subscribe, do all that great stuff. 5,000 subscriber giveaway is coming up real soon. Details by the end of the month of November. Follow us on the other socials, Bronzeville_Comics on Instagram. Same thing on Whatnot. We do Whatnot sales every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to be doing a special Black Friday sale at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Keys, slabs. Check it out. Whatnot's going to be crazy on Friday, all across the board. There's a link in the description of this video. If you've not yet signed on to Whatnot, you can do so through the link. Get $10 off your first purchase. Doesn't have to be with me. Also a link to my eBay store as well as my email. So let's dive into the Cover Price Top 10 list. Spoiler warning, if you've not yet seen the Marvels, there's going to be potential spoilers for the Marvels, so you may want to come back to this. But pretty much almost 2 weeks in, and you're watching these kinds of videos, it's unlikely that you've managed to avoid the spoilers. So let's go into it and take a quick look. Let's jump into it, and at number 10 on the list, Black Panther, number 6. Variant edition, the Duality 1 in 25. This is a book that came out last week, and it came out last week. And why is it on the list? Well, King Metelli, the old king of Wakanda, held the title a century before T'Challa. Immediately given to King Metelli. There's a 1 in 25 variant from Duality. It was King of the Pack, featuring an exceptionally regal Metelli gracing the cover. High sale of $167 for a raw copy and $110 for a near mint. Again, last week, so you're not going to see it slabbed yet. But let's see, Black Panther 6 Duality. Let's see what is out there on the eBay. Black Panther 6 Duality. Yeah. Wow, look at this. I mean, still 20 hours left at $92. Selling for over $100. Crazy for this 1 in 25. I'm dumbfounded. I don't know why this is so high up on the list, but it is. The regular book's going for $11, about double cover value, but man, $100 for a high grade of this. I don't see. Maybe I'm missing something. Is King Metelli going to be like an enormous character going forward? Seems like a FOMO book of the week to me, but I could be wrong. Let's move on to number 9 on the list. And it is Sentry, number 1. This is from September of 2000, the first appearance of Sentry, Robert Reynolds. And of course, rumors persisting that in the Thunderbolts movie, Sentry will be played by Stephen Yeun. There are some variant covers to this that are all fairly expensive. The Dynamic Forces is about 2.5 times. You got San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. But let's focus. I mean, even 9.0 selling for over $100 for a fairly modern book, a 21st. Well, actually, it's 20th century because it's 2000, but a 2000s book. Let's look at the historical value of this. Stephen Yeun, of course, first made famous by playing Glenn on The Walking Dead, and has been Oscar nominated. Really a great actor. And it's kind of unusual, like in 2000, that a character's first appearance is in their own #1. And what's interesting is we can see this was out of the box. I mean, by 2017, it was going for $250, and it kind of stayed pretty steady there. Comic Boom drove it up as high as 500 and change, and it hasn't lost that much of its value. It went down to about 300, and then a little uptick recently. So the most recent sales, a lot. Look at this many trading hands in the last couple of weeks for over 300. Even you go back to October 26th, a $350 fixed price sale. There are only 1,400 Universal Blue Labels, not a book that there was a large print run of, but about more than a third of them are 9.8s. I think it's a pretty good spec. And of course, Stephen Yoon's been invincible as well. If we just look, here's the variant signed by available for $1,400. Another variant for at auction. Wow, the Jay Lee, 4 days left in the auction. It's 5 bids already, $200, $250 for this variant. So the variants are going like hot. Well, that's a buy it now. I'm trying to see any auctions that have bids. No, not really. So I think the variant's going to be quite popular as well. Of course, on eBay, you'll see people listing books with very aspirational prices. Not going to meet them. Robert Kirkman let the cat out of the bag by saying Stephen Yoon is playing Sentry in a movie. So that's kind of driven the price of this book up. Up next, #8 on the list. Spoiler warning for end credits. Young Avengers #1. In the Marvels, the pre-credit sequence is Kamala Khan doing her best Nick Fury impersonation and visiting the apartment of Kate Bishop to recruit her for the Young Avengers. There have been people thinking for a long time that this track record's been laid down. First appearance of Asgardian, who becomes Wiccan. Kate Bishop, who becomes a new Hawkeye in #12. Hulkling. I'm not sure if we'll get Hulkling. Iron Lad. Spoiler war. There is something going on there. And Patriot, Eli Bradley, grandson of Isaiah Bradley. We saw Eli in Falcon Winter Soldier TV series. 9.8s around $300. Raws also around $300. This book had, rode the wave of the pandemic, the comic boom of 2021. The prices went bananas. I think, it's getting a little bit of a spike now. So we look at the historical value. It was just it was hanging there around $200 book. And then the comic boom went from $390 December 2020 to, at its peak, just 5 months later, nearly $1,300. And it's been on the down ever since. One little uptick there. And even still now it's down. I mean, you look at this, since the movie came out, right? 300, 305, 300, 315 in the most recent sale, a fixed price, which sold lower than the auction. Maybe that was just somebody wanted to move the book. It's I think we're going to see the Young Avengers. Whether they'll be called the Young Avengers or not remains to be seen. But certainly the post-credit sequence indicates that they're putting such a team together. It was since we saw Wiccan and Speed, that was it. I mean, the pieces are put together there. And so, it's moving. The 9.8's at about $300. And let's continue the post-credit sequence train on Uncanny X-Men #164. Carol Danvers becomes Binary. And we saw Maria Rambeau in Binary in an alternate X-Men universe. That has driven this book crazy. Fun fact, I just got a 9.8 back of this book that is staying in the personal collection. We saw this book was on the list last week. So 164. It's interesting because in the post-credit sequence, when she revealed her costume, only comic book fans like really knew who that was. Well, look, because there are many more copies sold of the direct version. And if we look at the graph, ups and downs, it jumped up in 2018, right? The end of 2018 to over $400 from around 100 to around 400, then went right back down to earth after that. And then it jumped again to 500 and has kind of been on the downward trend ever since, down to about 200. And then we jump a little bit recently, the last few sales, in the $250 range, including an auction that went for $251. So it's kind of telling when the auction prices are similar to the fixed prices. Kind of shows that the sellers and the buyers are on the same page in terms of the value of this book. $250 book. Where are they going to go with the character in the future? I don't know. But two things. It's an XMen key. People like to collect XMen. Granted, it's in the Cochrum's second go around on the book. It's after Byrne left, after Days of Future Past. The print run on this book was really large. I think it was their bestseller at the time. So it's a book you can get a hold of. You can probably get a decent copy for, I don't know, maybe if you're lucky, $25. If you're not lucky, maybe 40. Moving right along, right? And then that's number 7. Number 6 on the list, The Authority, number 1. Right? Now, this is on the list because of a James Gunn announcement. He announced The Authority as one of the projects to be part of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, of the DC Universe storyline. The first team appearance of The Authority. Now, the engineer, Maria Gabriela de Faria, was cast as the second engineer in the upcoming Superman Legacy film. It seems as though that film was in pre-production during the strikes, because even though Gunn, I think he said he had pretty much finished the script. But all of the art departments could work on sets and costumes and that sort of thing. It seems like in the background, they were working on the casting. More casting news today. Nicholas Hoult is Lex Luthor. They also cast Jimmy Olsen and Miss Tessmacher. So the pieces are starting to come in place for that film. We're going to see it in July 2025. And I think Marvel's been forced to have the opportunity. I think DC is now taking advantage of the opportunity, especially with Gunn at the helm, to make sure the scripts are ready. I think that was one of the problems that Marvel kind of ran into. They had a lot of great material to work with in phases 1 through 3. And I think they rushed some projects out of the word processing program before they were ready to really be filmed. So The Authority, if we look at it at 100, well, that's 9.6, about $200 in 9.8, $50-ish for a high grade raw. And let's look at this. Is a book that's been around for a little bit, for 20 some odd years, nearly a quarter of a century. So we're going to see only 95 copies sold, only 339 universal copies, a third of which are 9.8s. And let's take a look at the 9.8. Now, there was a silver screen foil edition. Look at that in a moment. Now, here we see like a $60 book until 2019 jumps. We have one sale for $350. That's a comic boom sale, right back down to $48. Then Gunn makes the announcement. It goes from $48 to $550 overnight, but has been on the downward trend ever since, down to about $200. Obviously, it went up way too high. The supply wasn't there, but then the supply came into place, and more people submitted high grade raws and got 9.8s, and the I don't think the demand is there just yet. It's interesting. I'm a DC guy, but I didn't collect these Wildstorm books, and now that DC has incorporated them, I'm a little bit at a loss. I don't have these in my collection. I didn't really read them, so but for years, Authority was in dollar bins. You may still be able to find some keys in there. Up next, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars #7, the first appearance of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. This is, we saw that character. Is it Sydney Sweeney that's playing her? I believe it's Sydney Sweeney is playing her in the Madam Web film. I'm not sure what to make of that film. It has 2 strikes against it just because Sony's producing it. But here we have 9/8 north of $200, about $20 for a high grade raw, which seems like a pretty good deal. Again, this was a book that was printed quite a bit. Rumors rampant last year that Sydney Sweeney would play the character. It was confirmed earlier this year. Distinct shot of Sweeney rocking the famous costume in the trailer. Yeah, the costume looks pretty comic book accurate. So this book has been around for nearly 40 years. So there's plenty of data on it. Let's see where the 9.8 has gone. Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars 7. Let's check out the 9.8. There are 2,650 copies on the census. 30% of them 9.8s. 199 that sold earlier this year for $4,400. And we could see, under $100 for most of its life. And then jumped up in 2018, came back down, went up from Comic Boom, has been up and down ever since. I think $200 is probably a fair price for a 9.8 on this book, and we're seeing a lot of sales in the last week, all in the $210 to $250 range. So let's move on to number 4 on the list. Amazing Fantasy #1, the first appearance of Aranya, who becomes a Spider-Girl. This is a book from 2004. Raw copies can be found for about $20, $25, about $150 for a CGC 9.8. Let's take a look at the track record of this book at a 9.8. We'll also take a look at the census count. I always come across the other Amazing Fantasy, not the Silver Age one. 1,800 copies on the census. Half of them are 9.8s. 30-day trend is $132. But recent sales pushing up close to 150. But we can see pretty consistent. Always been around 100. Maybe a little bit low. Started to come up. Then it went crazy. And it started to slide back down again. I guess there'll be a little bit of an uptick. I think like maybe 150 is kind of the best range for the foreseeable future. And I'd be a little bit worried about whether or not the movie is going to do the character justice, and if the movie is really going to long-term help the value of this book. Now, rumors that Disney is the next Spider-Man film is going to combine the Sony Spider-Man universe with the MCU. That could be promising, at least use those characters in other narratives. But the other thing, too, about the Madam Web film, there's a lot of characters running around in there. So, all spider-based powers. I'll go in with a somewhat open mind, but I've been hurt before. Talking to you, Morbius. Okay. Up next, Amazing Spider-Man 210, the first appearance of Madam Web. This is a book from 43 years ago. So it's a little harder to get a 9.8, but still not like where the 9.8s, just fall off the table. 9.8s are getting close to $1,000. High grade books of $150 all the way up to a sale for $300. You have to be pretty sure that that is a 9.8. That seems like a lot to pay, but let's look at the trend, and I'm going to look at the 9.8 just because There should be enough of them. We'll look at the census count. So we're going to look just at the regular, because there are 1,250 sold, 3,272 universal, only 6.5% in a 9.8. So the most common sold is a 9.6. Let's look at the 9.8 and the 9.6. Probably enough sales that we could make a generalization. Always was a key. I mean, a 9.8 from a book from 1980 that has a first appearance, it went down to 100 something, but always like in the $300 range. And then it started to climb up. And then the comic boom went boom. And it went up to $1,700. And it's been coming down, a little bit of an upswing there, I guess, when they announced they were doing the movie. And then down, not too far, but $800 down to $600 in July. And then we got a bounce back here at $1,440. Looks like right now it's trending around $1,000. Let's quickly look at the trend of the 9.6, which there should be more copies of. And again, we got the spike here, and it's been trending down ever since. I guess it's selling maybe in the $300 range, $250 to $300 for a 9.6. Let's go to number 2. And it's Amazing Spider-Man number 30 from 2001, the first appearance of Moreland and Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel Sims is going to be the movie's villain. And they're like, Sony has been teasing the storyline of the Spider Totem. Sony's still working on these lesser characters in the Spider-Verse, but you're going to have enough slabs if people sent it in. Amazing Spider-Man 30. Let's take a look at that. All right, 522 sold. We'll look at the 9.8. 56% of all graded copies. There are 1,489 universal and 699s. Last sale in February for $2,420. We can see this book, right? It's under $100 for most of its life. I know by looking at the graph here that we went from about $100 some odd book, 100 and change at the end of the pandemic to beginning of 2021. I just had a complete brain freeze. Selling, look at $200 sale, but probably in the $170 range. A lot of sales because, there's 836 9.8s. It's a book from 2001. So it is plentiful. Now let's go to number 1 on the list, and I'm scratching my head as much as you are. Alien Legion, number 1. Nobody was specking on Alien Legion. This is a first issue from Epic Comics, which was a Marvel imprint, 1984. Hollywood Reporter is reporting that Tim Miller, the director of Deadpool, is set to adapt the Alien Legion and grow it into a space opera franchise. We'll see. That's kind of why it's popping. And again, it's a book that I don't think people are really speculating on. If we look at the values here, right? Raws going for 20-ish. 9.8s. The fair market value is $275. The last sale, $395. So that is going up. I did not read this book. It ran for 20 issues. There are only 60 copies on the census, and 31% of them, just more than half, are 9.8s. 60 copies on the census of Alien Legion number 1. So I think with the 9.8s, we're looking at a supply and demand thing, right? And also people who had the 9.8s, if they had them listed on eBay or something at a fixed price, when the news broke, like the 158, look, I mean, go back to November 10th, right? The previous sale, Heritage sale in July, $94. That kind of set the market. after the boom, right? And then you look at November 10th, which is before the news, $95. Now, for an auction, then two fixed prices for 158 and 150. I imagine those had been sitting there for a while. And then somebody heard the news, jumped on them. And then the other was a best offer accepted of a list value of $395, which is out of control. I'd be a little bit wary with this book. You'll probably find it in back issue bins. I would not be chasing a 9.8. There are more 9.8s that are going to come to market. I'd say even if you wait 2 or 3 months, I'm pretty sure that like the movie's not going to be released in that time. You'll have time to get the book when it comes down a little bit further. So that is it. So that is it for the Covrprice Top 10 for this week of November 20th, 2023. The trailers, the post-credit sequences drove a lot of them, but a rumor about an obscure 80s secondary imprint book coming to either the big or small screen. I don't know. It's a little unusual, but hey, enjoy what you want to collect. And I thank you for stopping by. Take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.